Hello. What up, nerds? How are y'all doing? How are you feeling in this morning, afternoon, evening, or night that you are watching this video? How has your day been? Has your day been good? Has it been okay? How's your stomach? Did you, in any shape or form, have to fight for your life in the bathroom today? Because if so, I'm sorry, and I feel you. I've been there. Not today, but before. Interesting. This goes over here tonight. I hope you're feeling lovely. I hope you're feeling wonderful and beautiful and amazing and sexy and attractive. 1 minute and 1 second as I say that. So somebody watching this is good looking, and you need to open yourself up to that reality. Accept it. 1 minute and 11 seconds as I say that. So you need to open yourself up to those compliments, my love, as they will be coming through surely. Surely they'll be coming through for you. If not already, they'll be coming here for you soon. There we go. Perfect. Happy February. I keep wanting to say November. I wonder what that's about. Happy February 22nd, I believe. So that's 02222025. So we love that. So what is the full number for today? Let's see if I can do this math super quick. Hold on. So that's 2, 4. 2025 is 4, 5, so that's 9. So that's 2, 4, and 9. So then the 2 and 4 is 6 and 9. So it's 15. So then the overall number for today is 6, if I did that math correctly. If I didn't, don't say anything. Don't say nothing. 2 minutes and 22 seconds, so I say that. The overall number for the day, if you're watching this on the 22nd, the overall number for today is 6, and 6 is a great number. It represents harmony. It represents sacrifice. It represents patience, I believe, as well. It's actually a solid number. I actually really like it, and it also represents refocusing on what is important. So if you've had a little bit of time here where you've kind of been out of focus and you haven't really been focusing on what's important to you, now is a good time to bring that back. Very gently guide yourself back. Also, have you had water today? Do you have anything of the moisturizing variety on your lips? Don't be walking around with ashy lips, bruh. There's so many things that you could do to make that not the case. There's chapsticks, there's Vaseline, there's lip balms. I usually just buy a big tub of Vaseline because it's multi-purpose. I come from an ethnic household, so we use Vaseline for everything. Everything! 3 minutes and 33 seconds as I say that. So let's drink some water together, shall we? If you've had water today, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. Even if you had it in like a tea or something, I'm so proud. If you didn't have water today, I'm still proud of you. Because you were up, you did something. Even if you sat in bed all day, you were there, you were conscious to some extent. So I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for existing. Way to go. 4 minutes and 4 seconds as I say that. I have something that's actually been on my mind that I kind of want to talk about. 4 minutes and 14 seconds as I say this. So it is a good time for me to talk about it. As I've said to you all before, 4 represents planning, foundations, and then 4, 14. So that's 4 and 4 is 8 and 1 is 9. So that's the ending of old chapters and bringing in the new. I love numerology. I love that numbers have meaning and they have feeling. You know, it kind of makes math a bit more attractive to me. So I am sorry if the noise from the dryer is going on. My sister is actually going away this weekend. She's headed out with some friends tomorrow, and she's going to be away for a couple of nights. And so I'm going to be here, in the room, doing my own thing. And she's got to wash clothes. She had a long day today, so she was like, I have to wash clothes, and I know you have to do your video. And I was like, girl, it's fine. You got this. You wash. That's infinitely more important. You got to make sure your stuff's taken care of. So I hope you all can hear me. I can scoot closer. I hope this isn't too close. How you doing? But I had something that I wanted to share with you all that I have actually been in conversation with my best friend about. So if you're watching this, bestie, thank you for inspiring the topic, I guess, of this video, because it is a whole topic. Spoiler alert, there's going to be a little vulnerability in this one. So I guess I'll get right into it. I had a very good day today. It was a very good day. I had a very good day. Didn't really do a whole lot. I played some video games just on my own time. Made some food, cooked some really great dinners. So my dad made the spaghetti because I can't seem to get the consistency of spaghetti right. The way he does it, the spaghetti is always moist. So it's like it moves, you know, the spaghetti's separated. It's not like dry and crusty. And he's taught me how to do it like 6 times, and I keep forgetting. I don't know what's going on with my brain. But we're going to talk about brains here in a minute for a reason. But I made that, and then I made grilled chicken spaghetti sauce because I have fallen out of love with ground beef and ground turkey. So I prefer to use literally any other type of protein to make my spaghetti. So that's what we made tonight. It was delicious. I was like, oh, did I eat? And then my dad ate the food, and then I ate it. It's amazing. I'm so glad I have leftovers for tomorrow. Hopefully he doesn't eat everything, because if I wake up late, you know, you snooze, you lose. So, but I had a really good day today. But something that my best friend and I have been talking about is the possibility that the man who is my soulmate, there is a high possibility that this man will have some type of neurospiciness, primarily ADHD. 7 minutes and 7 seconds as I say that. So whoever I'm talking to, you may have ADHD, you may be neurospicy of some type, or you may be a person who is in the category of what people are calling neurotypicals, people who your brain functions as expected. So like when, you know, babies are born, or when human beings are existing and growing up, doctors and healthcare professionals have an expectation of kind of the average of how people's brains function. So if your brain functions in like the similar processing, the synapses are firing, you've got the proper levels of dopamine, serotonin, yada yada yada, all that stuff, then you are considered a neurotypical person. If your brain does not look like that, and if there are certain synapses that don't fire, or there's certain deformities in the brain, or there's certain chemicals that are not being made correctly and things of that nature, that is typically what we refer to as neurospiciness. And there are different things that we use to describe the functionings that happen in a brain that is not neurotypical. What is it? It's hello? Is it neuro? It's not neurodivergent, is it? No, that's not it. It's neurotypical and if it's not neurodivergent, I don't know what the term, it's completely slipped my mind. That's crazy. I can't remember. I'm not going to slow us down. But we have talked about this. And then I actually was having a little bit of a meditative sit down today. I did a tarot card reading today, an oracle reading. So if you haven't seen that, you'll find it in my Spiritual Biddies playlist, where I did a 7-card pull. There are lots of things discussed in that video, and some of it doesn't have to do with the title of the video. So if you're feeling that you should go watch it, 9 minutes and 9 seconds. So some of you have a chapter that is ending, and that video may be helpful to some of you, but it might not. So check with your spirit, because it's like 50 minutes long. So I don't want you to have to sit through that if it's not something that you feel, you know, connected to. But anywho, my bestie and I were talking about that, and I checked with my spiritual team, and they were like, yeah. And I was like, what? Yeah. And they were like, so we're going to go ahead and let you know, this is something that when you lock it in with your spiritual team is a huge benefit. Your team will prepare you in the necessary ways that you need to be prepared for that which is on your path, that which your soul desires, and that which it wants. Because I personally believe that each spirit that came back here signed a contract And in that contract, we had everything. We had the type of life we wanted to live, the type of personality that we wanted to deal with, the type of lifestyle we wanted to live, the type of experiences we wanted to have, and the types of challenges we wanted to go through when we came back here. This is personally what I believe. Do I have proof of this? No. But I'm just saying that is what I believe. And one of the things that I've discovered is that your spiritual team, when you wake up and you say, hey, I want to be in contact with my spiritual team. I want to go through this life in a way where I'm not completely blind. Like, I would like to have certain answers. I would like to have certain guidance. Then when you call upon them and you speak it out loud and you say, Ayo, I would like assistance. I believe that you all exist. I believe that this is here for me. That is when they step in and they go, okay, we're here to help you. So for me, I believe that because of the way my brain works, I am not diagnosed with anything before I keep going. Because of how my brain works and because of how my kind of set personality is, there are things that I'm growing with in that change, but there are certain personality things that have been consistent since I was like 4. And my team understands those challenges. And so what they do is they actually assist me by preparing me. So something, 11 minutes and 11 seconds as I'm gonna say this, and that represents like doors opening for you. I at times can become very anxious about the future. Now this is something that a lot of people experience, but because I have a spiritual team, my spiritual team actually gives me a lot of information that will save the surprise. It like, what do you call it? It like protects the surprise. It maintains it, but also gives me just enough information so that I'm not as anxious as I maybe would be. So when I first started doing these videos, I didn't realize that I was going to start moving towards doing content creation for work. But my spiritual team knew that. They knew that my passion, the thing that was going to get me charged, it was going to, butter my biscuit, if you will, was going to be content creation, streaming, making videos for you guys, and, healing myself through the process. And so what they did was everything in my life has been helping lead me up until this point. As I look back down the history of my life, like I told you guys in maybe my last video, I went back through a lot of my old pictures and posts from like social media, 12 minutes and 23 seconds as I'm saying this, from back in the day, and I noticed that everything that's been happening in my life has been leading me up to this point. To the point where I'm like, that's crazy. If I had a bird's eye view, I never would have doubted a thing. But that's the reason why I didn't have a bird's eye view, because there's certain things that I needed to grow through, certain challenges that I needed to overcome without having that knowledge. So, one of the things that my spiritual team has made me aware of, and future Yasha, if you guys are following me and we're talking at the time that my soulmate and I run into each other, I will tell you if he does, but my spiritual team is telling me that my partner has ADHD. And this is actually very interesting. 13 minutes and 13 seconds is about to say this, so let's go ahead and hit a supreme backstory on the matter. Okay, story time and vulnerability time. My ex has, most likely, I have not spoken to him in forever because I realized via talking with my spiritual team that we were not to be in each other's lives anymore. We were only in each other's lives for a season. I learned what I needed to learn, and he learned what he needed to learn from that relationship. Our paths were meant to diverge. We were not meant to continue our relationship. So even though legally we're still married, we are not talking. We are in separate places. And I was very dedicated. When my spiritual team asked me, they're like, are you willing to leave your past behind? We know that you cannot get legally divorced right now because of the financial situation that you're in and because of how tough all the legal paperwork is. And I was like, no, I'm serious. And they were like, okay, block him on everything. 14 minutes and 14 seconds as I say this. And I was like, that feels kind of mean. Why am I blocking him on everything? And they were like, well, because you're moving forward. You are to act as if your soulmate is already here. And if you're with your soulmate, there is no reason for you to still be in talks with your ex. Now, for some of you, that's not the case because you actually have a close relationship, or you're co-parenting, or there's a reason why you have to be involved in each other's lives. But for me, there was no reason. I would message him or call him, and our conversations would be relatively one-sided, not because there was anything wrong per se. I'm going to explain why this was a possibility, why a possible reason why this was. But when we would have our calls, there wasn't a whole lot that I was getting from the conversation. And I felt so bad because whenever I would, think about him, I'd be like, I should call and I should check on him. And at some point, my dad was like, why are you still calling him? And I was like, well, I feel guilty about the fact that I initiated, essentially our separation, and I kind of left him high and dry. And he was like, you didn't leave him high and dry. You have been talking to him and maintaining conversation with him for 7 months. How often does he reach out to you? How often is he trying to maintain conversations? Did he check on you after the separation? No. And again, it's not because he's a bad person. It's just because we were not meant to be in each other's lives for that long. So of course, he's moving forward. He was dating other people, all that good stuff. And I had a lot of stuff to process and did not have any time to process anything as far as what was happening on his side of the fence. So imagine my shock when my spiritual team told me that my partner is going to have ADHD. And the reason this is interesting is, like I said, my ex has ADHD, and a lot of the issues that cropped up in our relationship was because of both of our not really understanding how impactful his ADHD was going to be to our relationship. I may potentially have autism. I may be on the autistic spectrum. Again, I have not been diagnosed. I have friends who have been diagnosed with autism, and whenever I'm talking and I'm frustrated about how I can't just lock it in with certain things, they're like, bro, that's autism. Like, I'm diagnosed. I took the test. I remember the questions they asked me. You have autism. And I'm like, well, until a medical professional tells me that, I don't want to walk around saying that I have it. I mean, there are certain allowances that I give myself. Like, I look up ways that certain autistic people can make life easier for themselves, and I do those things, and they typically do work for me. But again, I'm not diagnosed, so I don't say that, because I respect the diagnosis itself. I respect the struggles of people who have those struggles. 17 minutes and 17 seconds as I'm saying this. So some of you watching this may also be autistic or on the autistic spectrum, or you could be autistic. And our relationship definitely had a lot of conflict because of these differences. And because at the time I didn't know that there was the possibility that I was autistic, I didn't know to even do research to see if the things that I was struggling with, if they were on that spectrum and what I could do to help myself. I only started figuring things out as far as giving myself allowances within the past, I would say, 2 years, and my ex and I have been separated for at least 3.5 maybe. Yeah. So, we had a lot of issues, and when he told me that he had ADHD, I started looking it up at the time, my ex. I started looking it up because I wanted to learn, but when I would talk to him about it, he didn't really have a lot to say. I would ask him questions about his experience, and he wouldn't really tell me anything. It was kind of like, oh, like, it doesn't really affect my life too tough. Like, there's some things that I struggle with, but it's not really that big of a deal. So my thing was, if it's not that big of a deal to you, it's not that big of a deal to me. So instead of continuing to educate myself, I stopped, and I just went, acted as if it was a relationship between two neurotypical people, which was a giant mistake. But I do, give compassion to myself and compassion to him, because we just didn't know. That it was going to affect the relationship in the way that it did. And this is actually common for a lot of people who have ADHD and or autism. Your relationships, your romantic relationships, are affected. And I mean, it makes sense, because how can they not be? 19 minutes and 19 seconds as I say this. How can your relationship not be affected by how your brain processes things? It makes sense to me now, but at the time, I didn't think about it because I didn't understand the extent. Didn't get it. So there were a lot of issues in the relationship. One of the things is that I didn't feel like I was a priority. I felt like various things that gave him dopamine or serotonin, I can't remember which one is the feel-good one in that regard. He was very into, like, video games. And this is actually one of the reasons I think a lot of partners do not like their partner's special interests, because if they do have ADHD and those special interests tend to be laser focused, it can feel like you're not a priority, and that does sting, especially if you're a person who you're very into communication, you're very into quality time, and you don't know anything about ADHD, and so you're over here like, oh, you just don't give a fuck, you just don't care about me. It's very easy to think that. And so that was a big source of contention in our relationship, was I felt like I was always having to seek him out, and I was always having to pull him uphill to spend time with me. I felt like there was this divide between us at all times. Like, I felt like I love conversation, I love talking and engaging with my partner. It's never just that I want to talk at the other person. I do want engagement. That's where the bonding comes from. But we would be sitting there, and when he would be talking, he'd be very engaged. He wouldn't really need to do anything, but the minute I started talking, he would pick up a Rubik's Cube or something to play with, or an instrument, because he had to have something to do with his hands in order to stay locked into the conversation with me. But at the time, I didn't realize that. I was like, oh, he's bored. He's bored of my voice. He's bored of listening to me talk. He hates me. So you hate me, is how I felt. And I spent a lot of my time feeling like I was a burden in this man's life. Even though he would tell me how much he appreciated the things that I did, he would tell me that he appreciated that I would remind him of things when he forgot, because forgetfulness is actually one of the possible symptoms of ADHD, having a not so great memory. I think I watched a video of a doctor talking about it, a psychologist, and he said it's like Swiss cheese brain, where it's like there are a lot of gaps in your memory. And so one of the things that I stepped up to do in our relationship was I would remind him of things. But something that used to happen a lot is I would remind him of things, specifically things that he didn't want to be reminded of but needed to be reminded of. So if there was a particular bill that he had to pay, and it's like, I could have paid the bill, but there were, we split certain responsibilities down the middle because we had a lot of responsibilities. Everybody has a lot of responsibilities. But there would be things that he would just forget to do. And 22 minutes and 22 seconds as I'm saying this, one of the things that he would forget were things that were really important to me. So I have always been very particular about my things. So like, my knickknacks and, my blankets and my pillows and my clothes and my towels. And so I would make sure that I kept our things. I wouldn't mind if anything touches or anything, but my thing was, if you're going to use something of mine, please ask me first. Please check with me, because I feel respected, and it's one of the ways that I feel loved is if you ask me before you use my things. It's not a control thing. And a lot of people in my life growing up were like, oh, you just don't want me to touch this because it's control. I'm like, well, partially, yeah. But also, when people tend to use my things, they tend not to put them back where I put them. And I've actually had experiences with a lot of people who are heavy-handed, and they break my things. And when I was in like middle school, people would use my things and they would break my things. And I'd be like, well, now I don't have this. I didn't come from a family that just had money falling out the ass. So then that thing would be gone, and I wouldn't have it anymore. And the other kid and their parent were like, oh, I'm sorry, but nobody was going to replace it. So I had a lot of past reasons for why I wanted my things not touched, and he would forget, and he would use something of mine. And in a particular, so I am allergic to cats and dogs, do not care, have had dogs, have had cats, don't care that I'm allergic. I would rather die than not have animal companions in the home. And one of the ways that I'm able to deal with it is that I have my own blankets and pillowcases that I can place on like beds and stuff, so that if I'm like at a person's place and they have pets, I'm Gucci. If I'm lying on the bed and I'm putting my face in a pillow, it's clean, there's no cat dander or dog hair on it, everything's Gucci, you know what I'm saying? And I remember I went out of town at one point, and while I was out of town, he sent me a picture, and it was like a super chill picture of him just chilling out with the dog. And when I looked at the picture closely, because I'm actually a very observant person, which is kind of sort of a blessing and a curse, I saw that my blanket was up under the dog's ass, and it was a weighted blanket, so I couldn't put that shit in the wash because it was heavy, and I was really upset about it. And I told him as such. I was like, I can't believe why would you just go into my room? Why would you just go and take my things? And I felt so hurt. I was so angry. I was angry for so long about that. And his thing was, it's just a blanket. I was like, no, it's the principle of the thing. It's the fact that when I tell you things, I trust you to remember them. And with people who have ADHD, because the memory isn't the best, these are potential things that could happen because of memory. Now, there are other reasons why the relationship ended. It is not because of the ADHD. There were other reasons why that relationship ended. And I think I've already talked about this. I mean, primarily it's that we both got into a relationship before either of us did any healing on ourselves, before either of us were in therapy, and neither of us really knew what we wanted. So we got into a relationship because that's what everybody was doing. And we went into it and got to the point where we realized, once I started doing therapy and I started working on myself, I was like, whoa, we're not compatible at all. We don't want the same things. We don't have views on life that coexist well. So it was just a number of things that made, once I started healing that relationship, the ending of it made sense, but it was also necessary that it ended, because who we were as people literally would not enjoy living a life together. Just, it would have required both of us to have to be different people, and I don't think that that's what relationships are about. Yes, I think relationships are about compromise, but you should not be having to change your entire person to be with somebody else. There are too many people on this planet that are a good fit for you to try and fit a square peg into a round hole. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, after that relationship, because of all of the things that happened, similar situations to the blanket situation, I swore it off when I was in the heat of bitterness, when I was in the heat of anger. I told my sister, I said, I'm never, ever, ever gonna date somebody who is neurospicy at all. ADHD, autism, I don't want it. I don't want to deal with a person who has the special interest of video games. I'm not trying to mess with a dude who's, European descent. It was literally everything. I was going down the line of everything that he was and saying, under no circumstances will I ever deal with a person who's like this. The astrological sign, I was like, nah, the big fuck you. But after I did some healing, and after I started taking responsibility for the things that I did in that relationship that were not the healthiest, the things that I could have been better at. Now, of course, I do give myself compassion, because again, I give both of us compassion, because we rushed into it. We weren't ready. And we didn't know each other. And it's crazy because we knew each other for 9 years. We had been together for 9 years and did not know each other. Why? Because that was not a priority. My priority was being in a relationship. His priority was locking it down, and our priorities were not being curious about each other and seeking to understand each other every day. Now, some people don't have those priorities in relationships. 28 minutes and 28 seconds as I say this. Some people, they do just want to be together just for the sake of it. They don't want to have long conversations. They're not interested in, complex philosophical conversations or really getting to know each other. And I know that sounds crazy, but some people like a relationship where it's very surface level and they're happy, whatever floats your boat. Charlize Theron, to each his own, you know what I'm saying? But I was angry. I was so angry and bitter. But once I started healing through that process and I was able to get through it, and I was like, a lot of the stuff that he did, yes, was attitude based. Yes, it was things that could have been worked on, but a good chunk of this was also me not knowing anything really about how ADHD works. And I also didn't know how autism works. I didn't know the spectrums of either of those things, the potential complications that could come up in a relationship. So I say all of that to say, as I'm continuing to talk, somebody watching this video, the person who you are going to get with is going to be neurospicy, or you are a person who is neurospicy and you need to know these things about yourself. I'm not going to give you a rundown of what ADHD is or what autism is, because I'm just now learning these things myself. So I'm not an expert on the matter. So I would highly encourage you to look up these things. And when Spirit told me, your man's gonna have ADHD, I was like, okay. So for the past couple of days, I have been looking up ADHD, how it's diagnosed in children, how it's diagnosed in adults, how it's different in men and women. I've been looking up one of the big things for those of you who your potential partner may have if they have ADHD, or which you may have. And if you have ADHD and you have not thought about this or researched it, I encourage you to look into this. Emotional dysregulation. 30 minutes and 30 seconds as I say that on my timer. Emotional dysregulation, for me, kind of the short of it, again, go look this up, but the short of it is, in a lot of cases, when I'm really angry or I'm really emotional, I have ways that I can deal with it. But people who have ADHD, it's overwhelming. It can be very overwhelming to deal with emotions. And this is something that it's been a big deal for me because I grew up in a household where if either of my parents had really big emotions and they kind of were really angry or upset, I immediately cowered. I was very like, well, what can I do to make everything better? I immediately went into people pleasing or abandoning, my own wants and desires in order to try and make sure that everybody else felt good. I heard somebody say, instead of calling it people pleasing, call it abandoning yourself, because that's what it is. Like when you say people pleasing, it kind of sounds nice. It kind of sounds like, oh, that's not that big of a deal. But she was saying that for those of you who struggle with it super hard, you got to get aggressive about calling it what it is. And what people pleasing at the end of the day is you abandon self. You're not protecting your inner child when you're people pleasing, because it's more important that that person like you or that person be comfortable than it is for you to set appropriate boundaries and for your inner child to know that they can trust you. So that's its own conversation. But emotional dysregulation, when I read what it was, and this actually is the same thing as, there is a term that I believe it is used in Europe. Like people in Europe already use this, but in the American healthcare system, we don't really use it that much. Some therapists and some psychiatrists do apparently, but it's not like an all over thing here in the US. And it is Rejection Sensitivity Dysphoria, RSD. And the very condensed of what I am reading about this and understanding it, and there are a lot of people who experience this who have ADHD, it's emotional dysregulation. But it's directly connected to rejection. And it's, if the person perceives that they are being rejected in any type of way, it causes them physical pain as if you have hit them. That was crazy to read. It was crazy to read. There is a person in my life right now who I love very much, who we do believe that the emotional regulation could also be, the emotional dysregulation could be RSD, and knowing that that's a possibility and reading into it has made our relationship so much better. It's made it so much better because I don't take bursts of anger. 33 minutes and 33 seconds as I'm saying this. So this is important for you to know. Me, a person who does not have emotional dysregulation, there are times when emotions do become overwhelming for me, but I have pretty much in my life come up with a coping mechanism for everything. I've come up with a way to deal with it. So if this is something that I struggle with, or if this is something that happens in my brain, I don't struggle with it, because the way that I grew up, that wasn't an option to struggle with. There wasn't the privilege to just kind of lose it and there not be repercussions. So, lock it in. What was I saying? So, that can sometimes be bawling, it can be anger outbursts, it can be responding to things that a person perceives as being rejected. So if like I were to come into the house and be like, oh my god, I'm so tired, like I'm thinking this, but my partner comes around the corner and they're like, oh my god, Yasha, I've missed you, and I'm like, hey love, and I hug them and I'm like, I'm gonna go lie down, and I go lie down. A person who has trouble regulating their emotions or potentially has RSD could then, in that vague situation, be like, does she hate me? Did I do something? Did I say something? Did I say something the last time that I saw her? And because this is a person who also has ADHD, there are gaps in their memory. So now they are essentially creating horrific scenarios in their mind of not being loved and of being rejected, and they respond as though that is what has happened. And for some people, not everybody, but I think from what I read, again, go read this, but from what I read, this is not like, this is automatic. This is how their brain is wired. The chemicals in their brain and the synapses that are firing, it is literally wired to happen that way. So if you are a person who that is your reality, that is how you see things, you owe it to yourself to look up ways that you can cope with that, ways that you can work through that, so that you are taking responsibility for your own emotions instead of kind of forcing your partner to have to figure that out, to have to bring it to you. Because something I also did while I was researching was I went and I looked up real life people's experiences where they talked about what it's like having RSD, what it's like having ADHD, and, you know, just struggling with emotional regulation. And a lot of people, they would buck at it because they're like, no, like, I'm cool, like, getting angry, like, at these things makes sense. But it would be like little stuff that they would talk about. And they were like, yeah, you know, I kind of bitched this whole time. And then, you know, somebody who I love came to me and said, hey, have you considered this? Have you considered that this is something you may struggle with? And it completely changed their life. They realized why all of their relationships weren't doing well. Because you think about it. If somebody who has RSD or trouble, you know, regulating their emotions perceives rejection as any small thing, then their relationships suffer. Relationships with family, their kids, their coworkers, their boss, and their soulmate. Again, just because you and somebody are soulmates doesn't mean you're not going to have challenges in the relationship. I think, you know, for me, for a long time, I was like, well, if it's my soulmate, then it's just going to be perfect, and I'm not going to have to worry about anything. I know you're laughing, because it is silly to think about when you think about, like, how the world actually works. But, so, you know, I feel like I'm rambling about, like, the details, even though I said I don't know a lot. I just, like, really started getting into the reading today, or over the past couple of days, and what was pertinent to me to share in this video is that there are those of you who are on this soulmate journey, and your soulmate has ADHD, and your soulmate could potentially have rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And loving a person is important, and I think it's a big part of relationships. But a lot of people, when they hear the word love, they don't think about what love is broken down into. And one of the things that is a primary, I would say it's a primary attribute or ingredient of love when it comes to romantic relationships in particular, is patience. It's patience with yourself, that you're not going to do everything perfect. You are going to hurt your partner's feelings. They are going to hurt your feelings. And it's understanding that you're both human. Excuse me. So that is going to happen. It's patience with your knowledge and learning things about the other person, you know? But for some of you, this is important. You need to look into it, because if you've never been with a person who was like this is going to be a foreign idea to you if you don't have it, and if you don't have friends who have dealt with it or who have it. It was a lot to read, and as I sat there reading, I was like, I don't know if I could do this, because my particular brand of neurospiciness, it's weird. It's so weird. I'm kind of all over the place, so I hope I'm making sense. But, like, a lot of the things that men in particular who have ADHD struggle with, it's funny, because I'm actually built to pick up the slack. And what I mean by that is I'm almost perfectly designed to support a person who has ADHD in a relationship. I have a decent memory. It's not the best, but I have a decent memory. I have said in other videos that I am a paperwork person. So I love making notes, making logistics and plans. And now that I'm the type of person who, like, I wouldn't feel like I have to stick to it super heavy, I'm far easier to, like, work with. I'm far more flexible about stuff like that. And there's so many things that people with ADHD struggle with that I don't struggle with, and that I actually could step in and be like, would you like help with this? And I can do it. And it's one of the things actually that some of the psychologists who talk about ADHD said, they're like, if you have a partner who can help you pick up the slack in these areas and it's just natural for them, that is a match made in heaven. It really is, because if you have two people who have the same struggles, it can be difficult. It's not impossible. That relationship can work, but it is a challenge. It takes work because you've got stuff that you've got to take care of every day. Things like emptying the trash, doing the dishes, you know? For people with ADHD, what is it? Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder is, I think, what those acronyms mean. Essentially, it's just like you can't really regulate where your attention goes. So some things you'll laser focus in, like video games. You'll laser in for hours and you're Gucci. But then when it comes to having like a tough conversation about why there are challenges in your relationship, and you know, your girlfriend is over here on some, I just don't feel like you care about me, I'm trying to talk about this. And then people who have the Rejection Sensitivity Dysphoria tend to avoid hard conversations like that because of the fear of rejection. And then people with ADHD tend, in some cases, not all, and these are people who have not, you know, kind of worked on coming up with like coping mechanisms and ways that help them through these types of situations, because they're people who have autism, ADHD, RSD, you know, people who have these things, who they make it work. They put the time in, they put the work in. And it's a bit warm in here. Excuse me. I'm sweating under this wig. But a lot of people with ADHD do not have the attention span for tough conversations, because not only is it a tough conversation that's hard to focus on, almost impossible to focus on if it's not providing a massive amount of the happy chemicals to their brain, but also it's a lot of emotional labor. And emotional labor is both mentally and spiritually and physically draining. It's very draining. So when you're dealing with somebody who is neurospicy, you are essentially, you've got to be patient. You've got to be patient. And you have to know that a lot of what's happening is not being done to you. It's just how their brain works. Now, that's not an excuse for people to be assholes. It's never an excuse for that. I've met people who they use their neurospicy diagnoses as an excuse to why they're dicks, and no. I know too many people who are neurospicy who are like, I would check with them and be like, is this a symptom of ADHD? And they'd be like, hell nah, he's just being an asshole. And I was like, okay, I thought I was the only one, you know. But when it comes to things like this, it's important to put the time in to do the research. So a lot of you want these soulmates, and you want to be in love. And being in love isn't just the, oh my gosh, the connection, oh my gosh, the sex, oh my gosh, the gifts, oh my gosh, the traveling, oh my gosh, the pictures. It's not just all of that. It's also this shit too. And this shit can be challenging. So what I've started doing is I've started researching the neurospiciness, and I've started looking at what people who are in relationships, who are the partners of these individuals, what I can do to make things easier. Because 43 minutes and 43 seconds as I say this, I've heard some women who have decided, because their past relationships didn't work out the way they wanted them to, they decided they will be no man's peace. I don't judge that at all. You got to do what works for you and your experience, depending upon the harshness of what you went through. I'm never going to judge. But for me, the whole relationship thing, the whole soulmate thing, the whole being a lover girl thing is I want to be my man's peace. And for me, I believe that one of the ways to do that is to do research on the things that he struggles with, on the things that he is having trouble with. You know, how can I better assist as a spouse? You know, because that's what I would hope that he would do. So it's like, I can't be in a relationship with somebody and not be willing to put the time and the work in. And ooh, both ears are ringing as I had this thought. Spirit lets me know that this is actually one of the ways that I am preparing for this man. And I needed to know this because the relationship, I am being told that it's going to move very fast. So my spiritual team has told me the kind of general symptoms that he's going to have. I don't know everything about his life and his personality. I don't know what that's all going to be. But I know kind of the general neurospiciness he is most likely to have. I know most likely we will be long distance, and that's kind of a pain in the ass. But what's interesting is my spiritual team is kind of training me to kind of be in a relationship where I'm going to have to do a lot of emotional labor. And it's interesting because if it turns out that the person that I get with isn't any of these things, if they're local, if it's this, that, and the other, it's gonna be somewhat easier because I'm kind of in this training place where I'm doing all this preparation. Now, here's the thing. As you do research, okay, of all of these things, there is one thing you need to keep in mind. And what this is that it is a case-by-case basis. It's a person-by-person basis. I just make sure I don't have any gross white stuff on my lips. It's gross. It's essentially my lip gloss caking up because my mouth is dry. Uno momento, por favor. Agua. It is a person-by-person basis. So if you all have not met your soulmate yet, and you do not have ADHD, autism, you don't have any of those things, and you are about to start researching, 46 minutes and 46 seconds as I'm saying this, if you are about to be the person researching, keep in mind that the reason you're doing this research is so that you're not thrown into the deep end when you get with this person. It's so that you have a foot to stand on, so when they are telling you these things or when you're asking questions, you already have like a good foundation of knowledge to go off of. Their experience is unique to them. What I'm learning is not everybody who has ADHD or autism experiences the same symptoms. And that's really interesting. So I think for ADHD, there's like 16 different like symptoms that, are very, and these symptoms are common in people. It's just that people with ADHD struggle with them a lot harder than we do. Like, I used to think that people with ADHD were just lazy. They were lazy and they were forgetful and they didn't care, and because that was what I felt from my experience. Only to do the research and to realize, oh no, this is an actual physical, chemical difference. It's not a matter of willpower. It's a matter of that their brain is just wired, literally wired differently. It's not that they hate you. It's not that they don't love you. I mean, some people are assholes and some people are users, so use your discernment to dictate what the situation is there, But in these cases, you are loved. They do love you. They do care about you. They do want you around. It's just that in some cases it's hard to describe what they're going through, what they're struggling with. And I think for you all, you have to decide what you are... Is that a hair? You have to decide what you are willing to deal with in a relationship. So for me, I said for at least 2 years that I would never, ever, 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 be with somebody who had ADHD or autism, even though I most likely have some form of autism. And as I thought about it, I realized that love is not about it being the most easy thing on the planet. If somebody has any type of struggle in their life, any type of baggage, any type of challenge, because I have struggles, I have baggage, I have challenges, to simply say that I don't want to be with a person just because they have certain things, I have to figure out what my deal breakers are. What are things I just can't do? I think the dryer's done. And these are things that you have to ask yourself. Like, what are your deal breakers in a relationship? What are things that you can handle and things that you can't? There are people who have certain types of trauma that not everybody can handle that. And you're not a bad person for not being able to handle it. And the person that you're, and the person, if you are the person who has challenges and you have struggles, it's not that people hate you or that they don't care about you. It's just that some people just don't have it in them to deal with. Some people just aren't equipped. They're just not equipped. Think about it this way. Like, some people, their lives are a gigantic garden, right? And it's got all kinds of plants and vines and stuff everywhere. And you start dealing with a person who's a mechanic, they're going to feel overwhelmed. And they're going to be like, man, no, like, this garden is cool. I like it, but I can't deal with this. I'm literally not equipped. And then a gardener comes in, and a gardener says, oh, this nature is the sexiest thing I've ever seen. I can't wait to get in here. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I can't wait to assist it. I can't wait to caress the leaves and the vines and to help the situation, So I hope I made sense in this video. I think because I'm still processing the information, I was kind of still processing it here. So I think I'm going to definitely put that in the description, be like, yo, I'm also processing this, so please forgive me for not making any sense whatsoever. But to sum up, that's the research that I'm doing, because I already love this man. I'm not with him, but I already love him. And a big part of love is being willing to learn the person. To be loved is to be seen. To be loved is to be understood. And I know a lot of you watching my videos want to be understood. You want people to understand you. So it would make sense that you would want to understand the people that you love and that the people that you're bringing into your space. And it's interesting because when I realized the possibility that my partner would have ADHD, my team, because I've been hearing about ADHD for a long time, I just didn't do any research. So I know some of you watching this video are like, how do you not know? Well, because I haven't actually gone and looked up the actual symptoms and the actual chemical makeup and what happens in the brain. That research is so important. To hear things on TikTok or on Instagram and to just go off of that shit is wild to me. You've got to put in actual time to research, my guys, especially if you're dealing with a person that you are committing the rest of your life to and that you love. You owe it to yourself to understand it better so that you know how to navigate the situation. So yeah, I was moved to do that research. I am moved to tell you all to look into that, to do that research. And if you have these things, you owe it to yourself to find articles or find videos that explain your experience, because what I read is some people, specifically with RSD, with the Rejection Sensitivity Dysphoria, people struggle to describe it, the people who have it, because it's just a really, really intense emotion when it happens. It's a really intense physical situation to be in. And so if you have any content or if you have any stuff that you're like, I feel seen, save those things in a folder somewhere, either online or in a physical folder, so that when you're dating and you're dealing with a person and that person goes, no, I want to lock it in with you, you can literally share that information with the other person so that they're aware of what they're getting into, so that you're aware of what you're both getting into together. Relationships really are about doing life together. And it'll be far easier to do life together if you learn to speak each other's language. Communication between neurotypicals is already a struggle because we're not taught to communicate effectively. So imagine the communication between people who are neurospicy or a neurotypical person and a neurospicy person. Like, imagine, right? How complex and how complicated that would be. Something that I did read on, the National Health Institute, I believe, NHIS, they said that a majority of divorces that do end up happening have to do with people who have ADHD or are in relationships with people who have ADHD. And it's primarily because there is a misunderstanding about what is going on in the person's brain, so things are misinterpreted. So you're saying he or she does not care about me when that is not always the case. 9 times out of 10, that person does care about you, but the way that they care is different because of how their brain is wired. Again, not an excuse to be a dick. So that's why I want you to do your research, so that you know what you're going into, so that another person can't try to pull one over on you and be like, yeah, I have ADHD, so I just forget stuff, so I'm never going to remember your birthday or our anniversary, or that you wanted me to go to that thing that was really important to you. Not an excuse, bruh. Not an excuse. Especially if, like, a person already does things in order to help in their own life. It's very clear to see, based off of people who have ADHD, their responses to me, and they're like, no, like, it's hard for me to remember things. Yes, there are certain things that are important to my partner that I don't give a fuck about, but you know what I do? I put alarms in my phone. I write notes for myself. I do whatever the fuck I have to do to let the other person know that even though my brain is wired differently, my love for you is not. My love for you is deep. I feel you, I love you, I care about you, and I want you to know that, even though I be dealing with stuff. And it's the same thing with, anybody who is not struggling with those specific and particular things. Like for me, sometimes I struggle to communicate, and it's because the information that is in my mind makes sense to me in my own head. But the minute I start talking about it, as I'm talking, sometimes I confuse myself. And so one of the things that I'm currently working on now is direct and effective communication, because with a person who has ADHD, that is so important. I cannot waste time saying what I need to say. I can be cute sometimes, and I can be flirty, I can paint a picture for him, but for the most part, that communication's got to be direct. He's got to know how I feel. And I want it to be kind, and I want to say things in the way that I mean to say them. Like, part of the reason why sometimes I ramble in these videos is because and you guys will notice, sometimes when I'm thinking about things, I have to pause in order to try to get my thoughts together, because they're happening so fucking fast. And because I'm like, well, that's not the word I want to use, or that's not the word I want to use. So these are all things that I'm working on. These are things that, as you are on your soulmate journey, especially for those 56 minutes and 56 seconds as I'm saying this, especially those of you who are just now getting into new relationships, or you're wanting to get into new relationships, those of you who have children who are diagnosed or who are not diagnosed, and you may potentially think that something's going on there. Like one of my nieces, she has a doctor's visit, like a neuro, what is it? She has a neurologist appointment, because my niece could be on the autistic spectrum. We're relatively sure that she is. And it's interesting because when I found out that, as I was playing with her, I noticed that there were some differences. By connecting with my inner child, was able to adjust to what she wanted. So, out of my 3 nieces, she's the kid who I actually connect with the most. And she's the one that, she's very high energy. She's all over the walls, like a lot. And a lot of people are like, well, that's just how kids are. And my sister's like, no, sit with her for 5 hours and you will see what I'm talking about. She does not stop. She just keeps going. And there's certain things that she doesn't like there's certain sounds that she'll freak out about, or there's certain sounds that she really, really likes, or there's certain, she's a very like a touch kid, and so there are certain materials that she does not like. There are certain materials that she does like. Food, there's certain things that she'll eat that's just weird. Like, it's weird to me. Like, she'll just sit there and eat an onion raw. And she'll just be biting it and eating it, and I'm like, I can't believe you. You're not crying because of the onion juice. You're just sitting there bodying this fucking onion in front of me. And it's interesting because there has been a struggle with certain members in my family to connect with her, because of the fact that there's clearly like a wall there. So like when you speak to her, she kind of sort of understands, but in a lot of cases she just keeps going, or she doesn't listen. So I actually had, we went to a family function. My sister brought all her kids, and she tried to warn everybody. She was like, hey, yo, this middle one though, she gonna be a lot, and we're in a house where it's not baby proofed, and that's gonna be a lot, and it's gonna be stressful for everybody. And at some point, she was running up and down the steps. Walking was not like a thing she was talented at this time. And so there was a lot of worry. People were like, oh, somebody has to be sitting at the top of the steps, somebody has to be sitting at the bottom of the steps, we have to try to stop her. So there was a lot of trying to keep her from moving around because people were tired. Like, you can only play so much before you're like, hey, yo, I need a break, I need a cup of water, I need some juice, I need something. And so what I did was I locked into my own inner child, and I had her at the top of the steps at some point, and I started making noises, like just random noises, like with my mouth. And she stopped and she looked at me, and I was making these noises, and then I would just very lightly, like, and it was my inner child. My inner child was like, let's try this and see what happens. And I just very lightly would like poke her, or I would tap her, or I'd pat her like this. And based off of her response, because she couldn't speak, let me know what she liked. And as I was doing that stuff, she just sat right in front of me and she just lied down. And then when I would stop, she would like keep going. And I was like, okay. And my sister was like, I can't believe it. Like, you got her to sit still. I was like, I didn't really get her to sit still. I just took the time to understand like what she likes and what she wants in the moment. And as we become adults and as we get older, I believe that our ego starts to take over, and we start to believe that it's not our job to understand people anymore. It's other people's job to understand us. And so we become very obsessed with being understood, which is why we have a lot more arguments as adults, because we're trying to make other people understand our point. So you'll have a couple in therapy, for example, and I've seen this happen because I love to watch like therapists talk about their process, and they're like, hey, are you okay with your therapy session being public so other people can see? So I like to watch stuff like this. I'm a big like psych nerd, you know? And something that was always very interesting to see was two people who were actually upset about the same thing. They both felt the exact same way, but because they didn't feel like the other person understood them, they kept arguing. Instead of one person saying, okay, let me take a step back and let me try to understand you. Let me, willing suspension of judgment. You know, let me step into your shoes. Let me try to feel where you're at, and let me try to understand where you're at. One of the things that I really like that I've heard from therapists, and I've been hearing this for years, and so I try to do it, is when a person is explaining to you how they feel, excuse me again, ooh, the little burps. When someone is explaining to you how they feel in a situation, to take the time to let them know, first off, okay, I want to know where you're coming from. It's the problem that I'm having a challenge with, not you. Because the minute we get into relationships and we feel slighted by somebody, we tend to do the blame game. It's very easy to do, first off. It takes no effort to blame somebody else. And sometimes it makes us feel a little better when somebody else is to blame. And it doesn't take like any emotional regulation, or not emotional regulation. It doesn't take any emotional labor to do. But if you tell a person, listen, I'm frustrated with this situation, but I love you, so I want to understand why you're upset so that we can both figure out what's going on. And as the person is telling you what is going on to upset them, you take time after they've spoken and you repeat back what they said in the way that they said it. It's a fantastic like relationship disagreement tip, framework, whatever you would call that. And then you do that until the person is like, okay, yeah, no, I feel that. And this takes time, which again, why patience is so important, because if you're like rushing to get through it because 3 minutes and 33 seconds on the hour, as I say this, if you're rushing through it because you got shit to do, that is not the time to have that conversation. Again, a lot of us, and I'm really talking to myself here as I'm talking about all this, communication can be tough. It's literally like learning a new language. It's like sitting down and going, all right, so Portuguese, let's learn that. It's gonna take time. It's gonna be difficult. It's not gonna be easy. It's gonna be challenging. But if you lock it in with your inner child, it's not just living a life that is more peaceful. It's not just enjoying things more. It's not just appreciating things more. When you lock it in with your inner child, that curiosity and that love for other people does show up. You become curious about the people that you're around. So dates stop being where you have a set of 25 questions that you want to ask this person so you can check them off of your list, so that you can figure out if you need to drop their ass. When you connect with your inner child, it's less about that and it's more about learning who this person is in the brief time that you have with them. Going into dates, instead of having an expectation that this is a person you're going to sleep with or this is a person you're going to be in a relationship with, 4 minutes and 44 seconds as I say this, go into it with an expectation that you will learn something new. You'll learn something about this person. And I feel like when you go into a relationship curious, you go into a relationship researching, you go into a relationship ready to want to understand the other person, that is how the rest of that relationship goes. You're literally setting yourself up for success there, my love. Super beneficial to do it that way, I think. Because I know a lot of people who have questions like, I always ask this question, and they're kind of trick questions. So you're trying to catch a person in a lie. I think a lot of us, because of our relationship track records, we want to protect ourselves, which is fair. You've suffered through a lot in previous relationships. It's fair that you don't want to be taken up through there and you don't want to waste your time. But when it comes to human connection, I think you have to prioritize the connection that you have with the person over their usefulness to you. Now, yeah, obviously, if you're talking to a person and what you're learning about them are red flags and what you're learning about them are things that aren't good, obviously you're not going to have a romantic relationship with that person. I'm not saying to ignore red flags. I'm just saying when you go into these things, don't be so, all right, I'm shopping for a car. Is this a good car for me or no? Because people aren't cars. People have whole experiences. They have whole mental processing. And as I'm learning, their brains are wired completely differently, you know, person to person. So that's what I learned. I hope all of my ideas were cohesive. All the things that I communicated to you all. Like I said, I'm still working through things. I'm trying to figure shit out. But I'm enjoying it. Like, I'm learning how to stream video games. I'm learning how to create content that is authentic. I am learning how to slowly but surely add more things onto my plate after not having a job and not having anything that I've had to do for the past however many months. And I am currently being given the opportunity to learn about these things before I get with another person. So that when I get in there, we can actually have a conversation and I can ask good questions. I can ask questions that will let the other person know that I seek to understand them. You know? Be the change we want to see in the world, my love. You gotta be that change. Well, anyways, I think that's all I have for tonight. It's just crazy to be in a place where it's like, when you get out of a relationship, I know historically what I would do after getting out of a relationship, you know, prior to being married, is I would adjust the list of wants that I had out of a person. So if there was a challenge in our relationship, if there was a challenge that I had in a relationship with a person, I would take that item and I would say, well, this thing wouldn't have happened if they weren't this way. So I don't want my person to be that way. And now it's different. It's looking at those past situations and thinking about, how did I misunderstand this person? What are some things that I don't know about that relationship and why it ended? How could I have contributed to it? 8 minutes and 8 seconds as I say that. What was my contribution to it? It's so important, guys. It's so important because I know a lot of you want something real. A lot of you watching this are tired of hooking up. Like, you're ready to have, even if you're polyamorous or you're, you know, depending upon what state you live in when you're watching this, even if you're polyamorous or polygamous, you're looking to lock it in with solid people and to have relationships that are long-term. And these are long-term These are long-term relationship topics. Did not intend for this video to be this long. I thought I was only going to hit like a 30-minute mark because I'm actually very tired. Because what time is it? It is 3:38. No! Welcome back. So, I think that's all I got for you guys. Life is really interesting. Life is really interesting how it goes. So remember to love yourself. Be patient with yourself. Those of you who are neurospicy, give yourself some extra love on me, please. Because you are lovable. You are meant to be loved just like everybody else. You're meant to be cared for just like everybody else. 9 minutes and 23 seconds as I say that. Your challenges Everybody has challenges. Everybody has challenges. Everybody has something that they struggle with. Your baggage is not so heavy that no human being on the planet can carry it. No human being on the planet can get with you on that and help you through that and walk on your journey with you. Okay? You are loved. You are loved. Spirit loves you. Your inner child loves you. Take care of yourself. Get your water in. And for those of you who struggle because you forget, I would like for you to put an alarm in your phone to drink water. An alarm in your phone to spend some time outside. You know, if it's raining and you're like, I don't want to do that, you could turn, just turn the alarm off and keep doing what you're doing. But for those of you who do have ADHD, my lovelies, and you be forgetting, you just be moving through life and not eating, set an alarm in your phone to remind yourself. Set a couple that go off at various points in the day. Make the alarm something that's not super annoying. It's like really pleasant, and then when you pick your phone up to turn it off, you're like, oh yeah, I've got to drink water. Or oh yeah, I should probably eat something. I've been working for like 8 hours and haven't touched a single bite of food. You know? Oof. Oh my gosh, my back, and then I burped. It was just, everything was happening just then. But anyways, I love you all so much. I hope you have a good rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, or night. I hope you take care of yourself. Get some lotion or Vaseline for your lips. Drink water. And I will see you guys in, I guess, tomorrow night's video, because I don't think I'm not streaming tomorrow. I can already feel it in my gut. I can feel it in my gut. But I love you guys so much. Thank you for an hour, 11 minutes, and 11 seconds. I love you guys so much. Thank you for being here with me and listening to me ramble on and yap along. So I love you guys, and I will talk to you tomorrow night. Bye.